Hi, everybody. Welcome to Self-Care today. And today we have Shannon Myers here, and she is amazing. So let me give you a little bit of information about Shannon and why you want to hang out and really listen to what we're about to talk about. So today we're talking about self-embodiment, how to compassionately view your trauma responses as wisdom in order to connect with and embody your inner healer, because we are all healers, right? And if you don't know that yet, you're going to find out. So there's the gift. So here's the thing. Most of us, and what we've been told about our mental health and our trauma responses have come from pathologizing. I can't say that word, but basically being told that there's something wrong with us, right? It's a viewpoint that is not, it's not trauma informed. It's not spiritually connected, and it profits off of our pain. And we don't want to be in a situation or an environment where others can profit off of our pain. We want you to self-heal. So the awesome thing about the integrative mental health and trauma practices are that they are for everyone. That means you, yes. And if the traditional mental health care system hasn't worked for you or has worked for you, great on both parts. There are holistic strategies that can be layered into your healing journey. And if the, if the traditional medical models failed you, the integrative mental health practice works. And Shannon is a fan of all things that help, which is why she's traditional and alternative. That's why she calls herself the Integrative Counselor. How to get curious, which is awesome, and feel health symptoms are really the younger traumatized parts of yourself that are hurting you. And so she'll take you through the somatic trauma practices in order to get to know yourself healer and embody your authentic self. So you'll never really look at mental health or trauma responses the same way again after today's show. So this is a cool thing. So let me tell you a little bit about Shannon. She's a trained integrative mental health counselor with really lived experience. I mean, she's gone through a lot, and she's here to help you. So she specializes in somatic experiencing, which I'm going to ask her to define for people, because I don't think everyone knows what somatic experiencing is. She works with parts work, integrating the parts. She does psychedelic integration. She works with the nervous system, disability, neurodivergence, energy, and spiritual experiences. She is also a coach, mentor, and consultant. And I see the same here because I'm like, she's a shaman. And she says shamanic experiences, reflector, channel, and modern mystic. Shannon has taught millions across the globe. She's an expert at radical self-healing in order to heal root causes of the mind, body, spirit, and energy imbalances. And her mission is to teach our world how to embody their authentic selves. Wow. So let me bring on Shannon, my sister from another mister. Hello.
Oh, Jodi, you cracked me up.
Well, I mean, you're
you.
amazing.
I think the same about you.
When we first met in Iowa, well, I met you remember when I met you, it was like 20, I think it was 2020 or 2021. It was during
around there. Yeah.
Yeah. During that era. And I was in a rush, as you and I mostly are. And I heard your voice. I saw you. I didn't have time to talk. I said, oh my God, I love you. You need to be on my show.
She did say that. It was very much that way. Well, you are great at picking up on energy and things like that. So I loved it. I appreciate you.
Likewise, I appreciate you. So, so let's get the party started. I'm going to let you lead, and I'm going to ask you questions along the way.
Okay, great.
But I think that possibly where we want to start is, okay, what is integrative mental health, and why do we know what that is? Why should we?
Yeah. Of course, my computer is like saying, you need to restart your computer right now. I love technology. Yes, integrated mental health. So like I said, like you said, I have lived experience with so many things. My story is for another show because it would take me 15 hours to explain what all I've endured to be here today. And part of my path was, I'm trained as a counselor, and I had my own dark night of the soul, health crisis, near death experience with my physical and mental health, and was near death and went and see 20 different doctors and wasn't getting any answers. And I was on my hands and knees really in a moment, and had like a spiritual experience of like, you are going to learn how to heal yourself. It was like immediate download, like, you're going to learn how to heal yourself, and this is like your initiation. And I mean, couldn't eat, drink, walk, talk. I mean, I was disabled. And I had a small little baby, and I'm trying to take care of her, and I'm trying to work. I have this business that I have today, trying to do all the things, and it wasn't working. And I was honestly wondering if I was going to wake up in the morning. It was that dire.
Yeah. And we hear that, because like you and I have similar experiences.
We've lived it.
Yeah. So go for it.
We lived it. That's why I have so much respect for you. Jodi's story is amazing. And, it was a profound experience where I had to, the traditional medical model works until it doesn't. And so for those of us who require something extra or something more, integrated mental health is it. And it was it for me to learn. And so I am like double board, certified in the traditional and integrative, meaning like I did extensive work to become an integrative mental health provider, to understand all additional strategies that can work that are all holistic. And so I have like a screen over here that I'm going to read off what that is, because I don't want to miss the thing, because it's that important, because so many people have never even heard about integrative mental health. So it's very individual. So it's very much takes everything that's going on for you into context. And that's traditionally missed as far as like, how are you? And then there's an integrative assessment as far as like, I look at all of the things. So a lot of times people come to me and they're like, they're only looking at this, or they're only looking at that, very siloed. And I'm like, I'm looking at the whole thing. I want the whole picture. I want to understand you. Part of my job is to balance biological rhythms. There's a lot of things that are diagnosed as certain things where there's rhythm imbalances, and they're diagnosed as so many different things, and we're out of rhythm. Trauma takes us out of rhythm with our authentic self. And so that's part of my role, is to get someone back in the rhythm. Nature's a big part of the work that I do. So are human and animal relationships. That's a big part. Like you, now you are a nutritionist. Now I study culinary medicine. So food is medicine, food. Our mood follows food. And so I'm trained in food strategies. What do food allergies look like? Those types of things, and how that like looks at like mental health symptoms. Like if I have dairy, I'm having dark thoughts. Why? Because our animals are having dark thoughts, right? Because they're harmed. And so, and there's like celiac people. One of my things was undiagnosed celiac. And so I had that was causing mental health symptoms in dairy.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the harming of the animals for a moment. And I'm not vegan, right, or vegetarian. And I do eat meat, and I only buy organic meat. But I want to say this. They still have trauma when they pass. So you must pray for your food before you consume it to remove the trauma. Otherwise, you get that when you eat
People
it.
don't understand energy, right? Like the energetics behind some of the things. And you can, I am a shamanic practitioner, can journey into all of that and get the information around that. But we've lost the practice of like gratitude for, and we're out of rhythm with the land and the animals and plants, and therefore out of rhythm with ourselves. So I'm really big on food as medicine, and then also being trauma trained, how to like eating disorders. Because in the functional medicine community, which I'm adjacent to, they push a lot of food and things like this. But then I see a lot of disordered eating because they're just pushing food as if that's the only piece. And it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only thing, because I'm also looking at herbal medicine, supplements. OCD has been a part of my story. Well, why? Because I'm low in certain nutrients. And so I take certain supplements like inositol, N-acetylcysteine, those types of
every
things.
day. N-acetylcysteine,
Glycine.
amazing. I mean,
Amazing. It's amazing. It's changed my life. It's changed my life, and it's changed my brain. And so I was low in those things, and I take those, and I was trained in, how people don't know that you can treat your mental health all like naturally. We call it in integrative mental health, we call it oh my goodness, it's and now I'm losing the word, amino acid therapy.
Oh yes, yeah. So I totally use amino acids too. I didn't know it had a name of amino acid therapy.
Yeah.
Totally, as a brain health professional, use amino acids because you can use them for addictions,
Everything,
issues. I mean, like pain, right?
So many things. And it's like the dosage, and it's like, it blew me away, Jodi, to learn about this and to be someone with lived experience, like lifelong lived experience with like debilitating OCD, to heal that. I mean, I got my life back. It was amazing. Detoxification is a big thing. So hydrotherapy and detoxification is a big part of integrative mental health. Like sweating is so important, sweating in saunas, and movement. Hormones is a big thing. Thyroid, your reproductive hormones, your metabolism, those types of things. I'm trained in like what that looks like and how that contributes to your mental health. Exercise, I call it movement that you enjoy. That's what I refer to exercise as.
So, right. You have to go to the gym to have movement.
The movement, yes, the movement. How do I enjoy it?
Go to the gym. I'm saying have movement.
No, you don't. You don't have to. And you don't have to pay $1, to move your body. There's so many resources and things like that. And again, with working with trauma survivors, it's so important to like partner with your body in a way that you enjoy movement, which may not be how society says that you should move. Society doesn't say that I should go and have dance parties all day, every day, but I do. Because I love it, and that's what's helpful for me. I'm trained in
say that people, you don't have to do what you're programmed to do when it comes.
I love it.
Right?
No, because and in fact, Jodi, part of adulthood is questioning every belief that we've inherited. Like, does it work? Is it working? Do I need to update this? I call this the consciousness cleanse. Is it working? Does it need to be updated? Does it talk? And this is so helpful.
I love that term, the consciousness cleanse.
Yeah, I love thinking about it that way, because that's a necessary part of initiation into adulthood. And we are missing a lot of wise elders. We have a lot of people that are aging, but we don't have a lot of wisdom, because there's been a lot of intergenerational and historical and collective trauma that a lot of our ancestors have incurred. But we've got to look at like our inherited beliefs, because it could be holding us back. And a lot of them, spoiler alert, are from trauma and conditioning, and those things can heal and change. I'm trained
in trauma. I would just say, can show up as something that, and we'll go into it, but I want to just kind of tee people up, okay? Or tee you up for people later. Trauma can show up as silence. It can show up as loss of memory. Trauma can show up as anger, right? And all these other emotions. So instead of labeling someone as a narcissist or any other label you want to give them, if you have to label, go with trauma and send a grace card and send them, to Shannon.
It really is that way. I love your knowing, because that's the truth. There's an imbalance. I just treat everything as an imbalance.
Thank
And
you.
what is causing that imbalance typically is trauma and conditioning. At the root of all things, all behavior patterns, everything that's diagnosed as a mental health condition, it's all of that has a root in some sort of imbalance and trauma and conditioning. And there's something that we can do about that. And there's a lot of compassion. Like my healing process and what I've known as far as like deconditioning and deprogramming myself, even how I've been trained, has given me the most compassionate viewpoint of humanity, because I understand how much people are suffering, because I am trauma, trained and trauma informed, and that's my lens of the world. At this point, that's just how I look at things and
Yeah, so
experience.
I'm trauma informed, not trauma trained, but worked with some of the best doctors, I think, on the planet, to help people with their trauma responses as it relates mostly to their food, sexuality, things like that, because, or when they, when people don't understand, I know you know this, but I think it's important to share. So according to traditional Chinese medicine, if you have a trauma, and then let's say you're eating, I don't know, a pistachio, right? Your body may or may not, but may start to see whatever food that you're eating as a predator and cause inflammation.
Yeah.
And so, you don't know that you're not supposed to eat the apple or the cashew, or maybe you should get your body into rest and digest first before consuming. But your body's in a heightened response. And so you don't have to stay that way. And there are so many solutions, but,
Oh yeah. I love that you really get that, especially with the work that you do. That's so awesome. And I love that so many practitioners are becoming, trauma informed. And maybe I should describe like the 3 different levels of like trauma awareness.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. So there's trauma aware. So people that are aware of trauma, that trauma is a thing. And that's, and there's many coaches and people with lived experience that are trauma aware, that they're aware that it exists. Then there's people that are, like you say, you were trauma informed, meaning like you've taken some trainings and you understand trauma, and you've worked with individuals with trauma, and you can describe what that is, and you can recognize trauma, and you can recognize others that can help and recognize that. And you're probably more oriented to refer your clients to other individuals that have trauma informed.
Well, I mean, I'm referring a couple of people to you, right? One that you know of, another one that's coming your way, because there's only a certain level to which I will work with somebody. And when it comes, and I'm NLP, I'm board certified in neuro-linguistic programming through the Association of Integrative Psychology. So I technically can integrate parts. However, how do I want to put this? I don't feel like that's my gift. Like I can integrate some parts, but like if there's like a 1 or 2, but when you have multiple parts that have disassociated, that's not my gift. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And like, that's so important for you to know. And that's so important because there's a lot of providers that don't understand that not only it's not their gift, but like it's not their lane. They don't have the training, and yet they're saying that I'm trauma informed. And so they're seeing folks with like complex levels of trauma that are like thinking that this person is a fit. And that's not the right level of care that someone needs, because then there's this other level where I'm at is trauma trained, which means I'm trauma aware, I'm trauma informed, and I'm trauma trained. Meaning I've been trained in very specific ways as to not only be aware of, identify, but also treat. And then there's people that are saying that they're trauma informed or trauma trained, and they're only trained in one modality. When we see complex trauma, you need to have complex trauma solutions, meaning like I'm trained in multiple trauma modalities, and we'll engage in lifelong training in trauma modalities that I'm trained in, get experience of, and have the lived experience. So to me, I call myself, I have the triple threat, because I have the passion for it, I have the lived experience, and I have the training, which is lifelong. And so I want to identify that because there's a lot of information out there as the world is waking up to trauma, right? The world is like finally, no, it's a mess, but it's an opportunity. It's wonderful. It's terrible. And it's beautiful.
I think it's actually so amazing. Honestly.
It's incredible. It's such a mess though, but it's so incredible because this is part of our evolution. Like, of course, it's going to be like expansive and all over the place, but it's so necessary for our human evolution to like understand that in any way possible. That's why I'm like, anything that works for anybody, I am a fan of. That's why I call myself Integrative Counselor, because I'm like, I'm a fan of it. I'm not. Sometimes people try to put me in a box as far as like, oh, you're only this way. I'm like, if this works for you and that's helpful, I love that. Because that's part of integrative medicine. Integrative medicine, like we've created this term because we were filling in the gaps of there's the traditional model, there's like East Asian medicine, alternative, there's holistic, and people were falling through the cracks. And I fell through the cracks. And so integrative medicine includes all of these things. And that's the middle of it. So if there was like a diagram of like these circles, naturopathic, functional medicine, East Asian medicine, alternative, nutritionists, massage therapists, and then there's
all of those except for the massage therapist.
Yeah. So and then there's this other, right, then the alternative. And so I'm the center of that's touching in on all of those things with trainings that, of course, my training is going to be more holistic because that's my scope of my practice. The scope of my practice is not traditional because the rest of the things that are part of integrative medicine are it's movement. I incorporate a lot of movement, mindfulness, breath work with trauma informed and trauma trained strategies, which are very different. Somatic experiencing and somatics.
So what is somatic experiencing? Do you want to?
Yeah, what is it?
New term that is really hitting the airwaves lately, like in the last.
It really is. I'm so in this lifetime, one of our collective lessons, collective learnings is about our emotional and our somatic body, like as a species that we're integrating. And the somatic body holds a lot of traditional mental health therapy is about cognitive strategies, which is thinking strategies, which is fine. And works. However, the somatic strategies include that. So our body carries every history. My body, your body, everyone's body that's listening carries a recorded history of everything that's ever happened to us, our ancestors, and the human experience.
Hold on. Cellular memory? Is that what somatic?
Yeah.
Okay, I wrote the cellular memories.
Yes. So at the cell, it's at the cell level, but it's even more than that. So somatic experiencing, what happens with trauma and chronic stress is we get disrupted from our lived experience of being alive, being a human. And so somatic experiencing brings back all of the channels of being. So it brings the cognitive channel into being. It brings the behavioral channel into being. It brings our imaginal channel into being, like your third eye, your mind center, like your spiritual channel. It brings your physical channel into being, your affect channel into being, your felt sense channel into being, your spirit, your divinity, your spiritual nature into being, like a soul and body. It brings it all back.
I just got myself a new label.
Yeah.
I do all that, but I just looked at it as cellular memories, and I'm trained in divine intervention, spontaneous remission, right? So accessing the divine to,
That's it. Yeah. And to heal trauma often becomes a very spiritual experience. To bring all of those channels back into to be and have the felt sense of being fully alive. And because what happens with trauma and chronic stress is there's a trauma response or a part that's blended in someone's body. And that part, a lot of times, is cranking out thoughts. And maybe it's intrusive thoughts, worry thoughts, depressive thoughts, whatever, compulsive thoughts, addictive thoughts, you name it. Anything that's labeled as a mental health thoughts that are related. And those thoughts are diagnosed as a certain kind of way. Well, it's this part, and the part comes with posture, comes with a lot of times like a voice intonation.
Yeah, I was gonna say it comes with a tone.
It comes with a frequency.
Yes.
And it comes with a different frequency that I'm trained in and how to pick up on that. It comes with a felt sense, anxiety and anxious part is going to feel, very different. Maybe we'll play with our anxious parts today or an anxious part today. And that there is just a part of the mosaic of self. I just call it like, we're a beautiful mosaic of self. And with trauma, folks with trauma, there's going to be more parts that have more that are trauma physiology, that are stuck in more extreme roles, for socially acceptable extreme roles, like overworking. Like America loves that when you overwork. Like, yes, like and if you're a mother and you're like self-sacrificing, yes. Like if you're a woman,
they wear it as a badge of honor.
Exactly.
Right? And
if you're fawning
and frequency associated with that, which is not helpful to your human DNA. So
right. Okay. Right. And so you're getting it. Like, yeah. So
honey, I live this.
I know there's different ways. So my role with somatic experiencing, I include parts. We're going to include a lot of different modalities, energy work, shamanic, journeys, that are just guided meditation to access, consciousness.
Yeah. But what I want to say is, because I want to go back, because first of all, I didn't know what somatic was, and I had to look it up, and, life got in the way. And so it is a lot of what I do. And I still want to say that even though I do all those things, the people that I'm sending to you are still above my pay grade. In other words, I haven't learned at the depth, because Spirit told me, like for me, I don't need to check with anybody else, right?
No.
The divine. And he said, Shannon is the person you need to send people to.
Yeah.
Because she can take it to a level that you have not experienced yet.
Well, your specialty is different than mine, and your expression of divinity is, special. Your specialty is different. And I love that you check in with source, for that information. And because that's true for everyone, because everyone that is available to everyone. And that's what I teach people, I don't give the answers. I'm going to teach you how to access the answer and who to go to for what. And with that topic, I do what one of the things I know I was meant to say today was, I call it self-healing and I call it your inner healer. But the truth of all reality is, when I'm in myself and Jodi's in herself, it really doesn't matter, because all self-healing comes through self, capital SELF. And so if someone comes to me or Jodi and they're asking for support and resources, and we're in ourself, it is like we're channeling so that for your higher self to heal. Because a lot of times people feel like, oh, I have to outsource my healing to another. I'm like, no, you're healing yourself. When someone is working with me, you are healing yourself. I am here. I'm in my self energy, which is like non-personal, and you are healing yourself. I just have specialties in these areas to create the conditions for healing to occur. That's what I'm skilled at.
Right. So we're conduits, would you say?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, and one of the things that I like to do is really empower people to self-heal, so that when they're done with me, they might check in, right, on occasion for a tweak. But really, they have a path that they know how to access source, how to self-heal, and they become their own conduit.
That's why you're the real deal. And that's why you're a true healer, because you have the discernment, right? Like because none of us are to get in to interfere. We're only here to teach. And then for everyone that works with me, my whole intention that I hold the whole time is for them to take these tools to use with themselves, so they can, heal themselves for, the rest of the way. And I love that so much, because it is radically empowering, especially with trauma. It's like, no, this is all these choices are yours. And it's just, it's a different way to look at healing.
Yeah. And the one other thing I wanted to ask you, because something I picked up, it started hitting me like wildfire, recognizing something with men. And I sense that this is something, it's a generational issue. And I would like your insight on it, if you don't mind.
What are you picking up on?
Related, What?
What is the thing? Is it a
So
pattern?
I think that we had a lot of angry women raising their children, raising boys, right? And we emasculated a good chunk of our men, such that they're one way at work, but they get home and I'm not just talking my home either. I'm not actually even talking about my home. That's what I see in relationship, where these men don't feel empowered to speak their truth, right? To say no or say yes. They become people pleasers because they were raised by angry women who were angry because their husbands were off doing that work thing that you said, wearing that as a badge of honor. And these women were raising children on their own. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is a big deal.
Yeah, you're touching on what you're speaking on is a certain generation or a couple of generations.
Yes.
A couple generations in there. And maybe I'll speak more widely I'll address this and speak more widely, because I really think this is a very important question and a deep curiosity. So I've taught in at the master's level counselors and folks licensed.
You teach at Drake, at least last time I knew you were.
I did in the past, and I've taught at other universities, and this is where I'm stating, like, this is within the scope, because I have to teach, like, how do things get to be this way within our health? How does this show up?
Exactly.
And so there was a generation where so with industrializations, a lot of men came out of the fields and into the factories, and in the factories working these really long hours. And then, before a certain period of time, women were the primary caretakers, and men were working a lot. And the conditioning, a lot of this is the conditioning and the socialization of men, because men have built the world on their backs, and that's where they were said that they were valued. And so very, very physical labor typically. And then we've gone in, even in our lifetime, we've seen men come out of the factories and into offices, which is not a lot of heavy labor, but still working these long hours still, because that's what's expected in America and society and for men. And men have been taught that their value is by what they can produce.
Right.
That's what they've taught. And so
they're producers. Right. No, I hear you.
And so usually there has typically in traditional homes, a primary breadwinner and the person that's raising the children. And this is changing in the last couple of generations. And this has been very clunky, I would say. This transition has been very clunky because now people can access therapy sometimes. And there's more awareness as to, like, how these roles came about and how people have been socialized. Yet women are still usually the primary caretaker. This isn't in all cases, and this is a vast overgeneralization.
And that's okay. We are just going to generalize for the sake of this.
These are generalizations, and there's a lot of anger, repressed anger with women, because we are socialized not to get angry and to like implode inside and to be martyrs and to be selfless and all of these things. And it's like a tinderbox of both of these things. You build the world, I implode inside, yet project outside. All this anger gets projected at these boys. That's what you're speaking about. And men, boys, even from a young age, almost still to this day, only there's a generation of parents that are becoming conscious. It's beautiful. And I love seeing it. It's incredible. And it's still a small number of people. It's a smidgen. It's like 1 to 5%, I would say, if I was doing research. I don't know. I haven't done actual research. These are numbers that are flying out of my mouth. Yeah. And still there's these boys are taught to, little boys, suck it up. Emotions are bad. And so they go to these strategies that our society that is dysfunctional. The society that we live in the West is very dysfunctional, of men sucking in their feelings, not being in touch with their emotional truth. And like, men are bullied by other men and boys are bullied by other boys all humans have the same emotional, every human feels sadness and should have boundaries and state their truth. And all this isn't, we've been socialized in some of these gender,
socialized. I'm going to tell you, okay,
from all
brought me up to believe that men didn't have feelings.
Yes, and this is a thing that people still believe that men or they're tougher or somehow they don't have this innate sensitivity, which is true for everyone. If you look at a little boy that's 2 years old, and that's not traumatized, he's beautiful. He's running around. He has these beautiful feelings, and because he's human and he's alive, and there's some conscious parents raising conscious children that are never going to be traumatized, and this beautiful little boy is going to grow up and be a wonderful man in this world that is having a hard time with becoming conscious as to like what is really true versus how we've been socialized and how we've been conditioned to believe who we are. And there's certain mental models that are running the stories of humanity and system. And we have to look at, again, consciousness cleanse. Where did this come from? Where did this belief that boys don't have feelings or emotions come from? Because it's not true, like innately. But where did we inherit the stories? Because these stories live in our bodies. And that's why I practice somatics, because the story is in the body. They're shut down. And so this is why men typically cope with overworking. They cope with addiction. They cope with alcohol. And they
cope with people not showing up for them.
Yeah, and they're selfless. And it's a collective. It's such a collective wound because men still have creativity. They still have sensitivity. They still have all of these same human emotions that everyone has. It's for everyone, but yet they
can wear pink, right? They can wear pink. Men can wear pink.
That whole thing was like, there was something that happened. If you look at, I don't know, the older I get, the more I become a historian just to try to understand like where we're at. Like that was a marketing thing because colors didn't used to be, this was for blue didn't used to be for boy and pink for girl, and toys, they didn't used to have like different toys. This was a marketing thing. I also have a marketing background, and the two combined together, business and like working with people, for me has been like mind-blowing. Yes.
So do I.
That's so funny.
And matter of fact, when I was in Iowa, because I lived in Iowa for many years, I launched a debit card program for the United States and internationally out of Des Moines.
Oh, that is just, yeah. So we both changed careers.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
It didn't work. It was making me sick because it was not authentic. So
that's where I got my misdiagnosis, was in Iowa. So the whole thing. Oh, no, honey, this is a gift.
Oh, it is a gift. Yours.
No.
It's led to your path. I get it.
Oh yeah, and my book comes out shortly. I don't have a date, but the book is at the editor and the publisher. It's called Emotional Healing, Toxic Free Living. And
are you writing a book?
No, I wrote the book.
It's done. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
I was going to have people read your chapter of the book that's already available because your story is so incredible.
Oh, wait till you see the rest.
I can't wait. Oh my gosh.
So
I'm so pumped.
There's parts of it that I channel, right? So I tell the whole story, right? The whole story, which we're not going to go into now, but I will say there's two parts that are very interesting. One is the very last chapter, which is called Words Are Just Vibrations in the Air. And it talks about the word and the energy behind it and how it can be misconstrued and all of those types of things. And I have about 12 different contributing authors. Each can, this other part, and I didn't know this was going to happen until I started writing as a channel. I got downloaded the programming and where it came from. So I put it as an opinion.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you, let me just hear. Okay, I'm hearing I should share it. So if you remember in the 60s, we had the two sitcoms. One was Father Knows Best. Remember that? And it was a particular actor. I don't remember his name. I had to look it up to write the book. And the same actor also played what? Marcus Welby, MD. Remember that?
Now you are maybe I didn't get those. I had seen a couple reruns because I was born.
They were very short. So very short. They ran them. They reran them. They only had like 1 or 2 seasons, and then they reran them because it was a program. So I was born in 63. I'm going to be 61 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you're aging in reverse.
Yes, I reverse engineered my whole everything. So yes, thank you.
You can tell.
Yeah, thank you. So Marcus Welby, and you're right, we ran a very short time, but they did the reruns for I don't even know how long. But
wow.
Spirit came to me and said, this was part of the programming. Right?
Yeah, because it becomes part of the social story. People don't understand that like society we are co-creating it, and by not paying attention to some things is like very helpful for not perpetuating this, or to look at like what are you looking at on social media? Like, how are you programming yourself? Like, what are you putting into your consciousness as far as, because you're not only, I mean, you are engaging with your subconsciousness, but also the collective unconscious. You're engaging with that. And so how are you, we have to have boundaries with that, like boundaries with what we're allowing into our consciousness, because is it little t true or capital T true? Like what's going on here?
Right.
Is it a fad? Because we have to live through the fads. We have to live through the trends.
Or do you?
Yeah, like do you? Because you can opt out.
Yeah.
I'm never one for the trends because I've always been a nonconformist. I'm like, this is just what's trending. And, when I mentor people, I'm always like, just don't get sucked in, my spirit guidance team is don't get sucked into the trends, because true is true now and forever, and stay with truth. And because your words will have a lasting impact, for a really long time if you stay within truth versus trend.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Love that. And there's so much to be said about the word true, right? So for me, it's emotionally driven, right? But then there's
our perceptions.
All about perceptions. And then the perception of truth is based on your past, your current reality, and the lens in which you see the world.
I have to take down the lenses and see raw and filtered reality. I call this ultimate reality, without the stories, and without like the perceptions and ideas. And, that's just awe, bliss, and wonder when you look at the world that way. And it's wonderful. But then, you run across someone that they've got their stories and they've got all of these programs and things that are running in their system. And you encounter that on a daily basis because we're all bumping up next to each other all day and every day.
Yeah. There are some people who are speaking story, like they make up stories about things as they go, as a way to placate themselves.
Well, part of it is like from a trauma response. What happens is when we don't understand, when we don't understand like our own behavior or our behavior of others, and like we want to fill in the gaps because humans are meaning-making beings, and we want to fill in the gap. And so we create a story about what did or didn't happen. And that's coming from our nervous system, trying to fill in the gap. And it's a lack of awareness. And usually it's from trauma and conditioning, because when you are in your authentic self and when you have, cleared the cache of your trauma, almost like when you clear that out, it's just what did or didn't happen. And right, like versus the story of it all, because you know yourself and therefore you're not scared of other people. There's nothing to fear because the backdrop of our whole universe is love. If you can feel that, there's nothing to fear.
So I teach flames how to love, right? Like how to, the twin flame relationship, right? To heal the heart and really connect the heart to the heart, to always be connected with love. Because what are you connecting with otherwise, right?
Something in your lower chakras, which is not that. Like, yeah, that's a high spiritual development to be, heart centered. And that is, again, what this lifetime is about, is to travel up into the heart, because I mean, it gets even better from there, right? Like, it gets better because you can connect to everything, and your own higher self, you that is whole and that's here now.
So let me ask you this. Well, there's so much I want to ask you, but what would someone, if they came to see you, what would they experience? What would that look like?
Well, it's different for everyone because it depends, because I have a variety of services, but traditionally, it depends, because if someone is more spiritual, maybe we're engaging with more of the spiritual services, because I do like spiritual integration, psychedelic integration. I teach people how to do shamanic journeys, like discovering their a spirit guide that's with them, or an ancestor. Or if we're doing energy work, we're balancing that, and then a lot of times we're getting really curious along the way of working. And then we can kind of go and traverse into the human realms of like processing trauma, which again can be very spiritual, or the nervous system, or maybe it's food. And then maybe someone else comes and they're not spiritual whatsoever, and they're very neuroscience based, because psyche and soul are interchangeable to me, because what I practice is also very brain based and neuroscience based. And so teaching them about their nervous system, and we're doing nervous system work, we're doing trauma processing, and everyone's experience is very, very different, and it's authentic to them. And that's what makes the work to me fun, because it's just always interesting. But we're processing. My goal with everyone being trauma and integrative focus is to help someone process the trauma that's holding them back from embodying their authentic self, from being whole no matter what. And that can be somebody, if maybe you have a disability, or maybe you have ADHD, and because I'm trained in these types of things, of like, because our world says, oh, there's all this ableism of route, like, well, if your brain thinks in this kind of way, like, you're not enough. And I will teach someone how to accommodate themselves, and how to like almost guard themselves against just the ignorance that's about there as to someone's beautiful brain and their authentic expression, and how that's working, to kind of fully show up to the world. So that it lends itself to be creative, because then at a period of length of time, someone may, maybe we're working in a mentoring role, because I work with a lot of healers and leaders to be like their authentic self, conscious leadership, or therapists and doctors, wanting to like bring creative solutions, and maybe who are having the same questions that I did along my healing path. So them to step into their self with their work. And so that is very interesting too. So it just depends. It depends where someone's at.
Well,
I work.
You just mentioned, so these labels that are being given, right, to people, they are imprints. And so, which then become cellular memories, right? And we breathe into that, right? I breathed into my label for 2 decades, which was bipolar disorder and schizo 2. I had neither of them, right? I was intuitive, medical intuitive. Yeah. So, amongst other things. But anyway, the point is that I think what you want to do, if you're listening to this, ask yourself, is it for your highest good to breathe into a label that someone else gave you, which now is an imprint, which then becomes a cellular memory, which means you're carrying around someone else's opinion of you based upon some sort of like 30-minute consultation? Instead, what you could do is imprint this: I'm a divine child of God. I can co-create with the universe anything that I want. And then choose what that is and go see Shannon.
It's a journey. It's a journey, because sometimes for people to know themselves, they want to know, like, how are things showing up for me? And maybe a label, like, I use it as a jumping off point. I'm like, okay, great. Let's start there. Because maybe that is working for someone, and maybe that's helping them access. Unfortunately, in our world, because some folks, because of financial things, the label gives them access, or the diagnosis gives them access to services to help them to get to that point. Because I've worked with so many marginalized populations, and I get it. And I'm like, I get that. If that gives you work accommodation so you can work, and so that you can,
all day,
like anything. And so I'm okay with all of it. I'm okay with if it works for you, I'm all about it. If it doesn't work for you, I have some solutions as to like how we can conceptualize this. And unfortunately, with folks with trauma histories, we have to have like, it's all about transcending the ego in the spiritual world. And I get that, but we have to know ourselves, like at even an egoic base first, in order to transcend the ego. And so what I'm talking about, like, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We've got to have all of those needs met before transcendence. And I'm okay if if that was working for you, the diagnosis label, and if that's authentic for your, self-expression, that's great.
Well, and it was for me at one point in time, right?
Yes. And that's part of the path. And so we have to remember our path, because part of it was, for me personally, was getting kind of pissed off as like, excuse me, like, well, I'm supposed to just have, I'm not going to be able to work. And
the thing is, though, what you said was so important. That diagnosis gave me the accommodation that I needed to get me through life at that point in time.
At that point. So it's important. It's important because, and unfortunately in this world, in order to self-heal, I was working for the state at the time. I saved up $1,000 and I invested the $1,000 in my healthcare savings account. And I hired a functional medicine doctor to be like, oh, you actually have SIBO and you have mold illness and you have a thyroid condition and your hormones are off. And then I'm like, well, I also have complex trauma, and that has never been addressed. And then there was, all of these functional medicine co-occurring things, the gluten intolerance and all of this stuff that was going on. And that I had to self-fund my healing, and I had to have that. And then I had to, get accommodations at work, and then go through it was a traumatic process for me, because I had to help individuals with disabilities work, and I was being challenged with my disability at the time to work. And so I ended up leaving. No, it was honestly, Jodi, it was devastating, because I had for decades hundreds of people, and then my disability wasn't acknowledged. And this was like, what I was, it was so, and this is so common that it's just gross. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to just take a leap of faith. And I already had my small business for many years. I'm going to accommodate myself, and I'm going to finish the rest of this healing on my own, because I am not playing in these systems that are harming me. Now, again, this comes with privilege for me, because I had to have the $1,000. I had to have the education. I had to know how the law worked in order to transcend my diagnoses, in order to integrate that and accommodate that. And I understand that my story is very different from other people's journey. And I'm here to acknowledge all of that for people. And if you're questioning, can you transcend your diagnosis and be whole no matter what? I can tell you for certain that you can, no matter what.
Can you talk for a minute about, because this has always upset me, and sometimes I feel like people just are so committed to the identity of their diagnosis. Traumatic brain injuries, right? I mean, my husband's a great example. He had a TBI, right? He's amazing. You don't actually have to suffer, right? You can hold a great job. You can use neuroplasticity. It's not going to be just neuroplasticity, by the way. I mean, you can.
It's going to be a lot of things.
It's going to be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Oxygen. It's going to be nutrition.
Food.
It's going to be energy. Yeah, right. I mean, but the point is that, for me, and you can have a different opinion, I have yet to see drugs work for healing the brain. I've seen it as a stopgap as a pause, right? So you can pivot in another way to put in maybe a stabilizer, but it doesn't actually heal it. And so I'm in some of these groups and people are more committed to their identity versus the solution. What do you have to say about that?
Well, there's a couple ways that I look at that. I've worked with individuals with TBIs for many years. And a lot of times what gets diagnosed as a mental health condition is unacknowledged old concussion, head injury. I access for this all the time. I see it. And it's not treated. You're treated as if it's like not a big deal because there's not a lot of understanding of like integrative concussion recovery. And I know people that do that work, and I know, and I've seen people heal from stuff that they were told that they never could heal. That's the difference between the medical model that's more reactionary versus like some of these other alternative ways that are like, well, let's get really curious and like see what else we can do in addition on top of that. And so it takes a level of curiosity, but at the same time, there's a whole period of adjustment, because I've worked with people with disabilities for a really long time, and having acquired one myself at one point, because my viewpoint of disability is the social view of disability, meaning society disables us by not accommodating and understanding, the needs of all of humanity, versus like what your diagnosis is. That's a medical view of diagnosis of like, we have to fix you. This person outside of you knows more about you than you. That's a medical model. And I understand that's what's used in our world more often. And I understand why that is. However, there's also other viewpoints how to look at that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing with divine intervention, spontaneous remission, for me to help anybody and be the conduit for anybody, they have to be radically responsible, because that's where we're going, and accountable for what brought it into their field to begin with, which is typically your mindset.
And it's tough, because when you do any sort of shamanic healing or any root healing, it can be really confrontational, because you have and psychedelic integration can be very much this way, because you have this very, very narrow viewpoint of your expectation of what healing is going to require. And then here's like the experience of like, no, actually you're going to have to like, change a lot of things in your life that are not working, including like how you interact, with your own thoughts. But going back to like the diagnosis, there's a whole process that people go through. So getting the diagnosis is often, and a misdiagnosis is often very traumatizing, and there's a lot of grief that comes along with that. And then there's all this acceptance and things to understand. So the diagnosis is an entry point to understand what is available right now to accommodate and to support you, because that's the jump off point. Like that's a jump off point to what's next. Oftentimes, and a lot of times people stay at the diagnosis point, and maybe their values in life aren't transcendence. Maybe their values in life are different. It's I want to hang out with and my values are different than someone else's, and that's okay.
Teach people to live by their highest values. Like we have to determine what those values are, and then if you're
living by your values. Yeah,
but you have to have evidence that those are your values, because if the evidence isn't pointing there, guess what? You're either not living by them, or those aren't your values.
You get it. They're living by what they think that they are their values, but they're inherited like values, and that's what's causing the suffering. That's what you're talking about.
And that's like fracture. That's where they become fractured.
That is where they become fractured, and that can be very, very, very confrontational. Like, I want to be a mother, and I love it. I love it. I'm like, you are burnt out, and it's okay, that you don't love every aspect of being a mom, because it is hard. But the diagnosis of it all too is like what resources to, and what's the diagnosis and the label to access the resources, so that someone can get some level of stability, so that if they want to add in, if their values are transcendence, true values of transcendence to heal, or just to fully be themselves no matter what, that is possible. But that's a personal journey that is really different for everyone. And as long as it's like that it's your choice and your true choice, and not a trauma response, like I'm all about it. I'm totally all about like whatever.
Right. So so you have to ask yourself, are you people pleasing? Are you, and that's a process. I mean,
it really is a process. And a lot of times what's happening is there's a lot of underlying trauma, and the diagnosis is helping someone get to know themselves for the first time, or get to know themselves, especially when someone acquires a head injury or a disability, getting to know themselves, who they are now. But part of integration with trauma work is to get to know who you are. Oh, Jodi, you're touching on something, and I think that we do need to talk about it. I'm just like, I'm holding back from it, but we do need to talk about it. Is a lot of times too, what is not done is people get the diagnosis and that's it, right? They get it and that's it. And there's a longer journey that we can go on, and one to like integrate that into our full being and to know that like we're okay. And when you're doing that and you're really doing that in like a trauma like recovery way, in a way that you're really engaging with trauma support, you're going to the world, and the initiation is going to require more supportive people outwardly and more support inward. That's just how it is. It's not above, it is above and below, but it's also within and without.
Well,
like
ADIO, above, down, inside out.
Yeah, as you become more whole and inside, then the outside reflects that, and that's a participatory process. It doesn't just magically
Right.
happen.
And that
It comes
with the law of attraction, right? So,
totally.
yeah.
People are gonna see their way out. When you're at a different consciousness level.
And
The time.
it's okay. Like, let them go.
It is okay. A lot of times folks will hold on because there's an isolation period where it's like you're not quite where you're going to be yet. This is what you know, and it's a trauma response to hang on. And it's also, people have had a lot of trauma with abandonment, and they like, I don't want to be alone. And so they'll hold on to scraps, relationships. I call it breadcrumbing. I'm like, oh, this is, you're just taking whatever, someone's.
Well, it's interesting. I had this conversation with one of my clients the other day. They had gone to visit a family member, and then the family member like made plans while he was visiting, like not with him. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I said, you're married? And he said, yes. And I said, so if you were dating your wife and you went out to go visit her, and she it's his second marriage. I said, so, and I said, so she decided to make other plans while you went out to go visit her. I said, would you make an excuse for that? Would you drop her like a hot potato? He goes, I drop her like a hot potato. And I'm like, yeah. I said, and you need to set that boundary for your son too. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, you can't just, we have to stop making excuses for poor behaviors.
Well, that's a trauma response, the enablement. Like, and a lot of people don't realize that when you're fawning and you're enabling, and even you can be holding someone back from like necessary feedback. I mean, I'm a mom, and so there's if I don't let my child make mistakes and like learn from like reality testing some stuff, that's the best lesson. Not me like, don't do it because this is going to happen. Like, oh yeah, you fell, like, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the same,
we want them to fall, right?
You have to, because that skin knee, ouch, that hurt. That skin knee when I like, wore flip flops on the bike, and I'm like, tennis shoes probably are a better idea. When you're like really pedaling up a hill. But when we try to, and it's prevalent with healers, the fawning too. And you've got to watch yourself.
You're calling it fawning?
Fawning. Yeah. The people pleasing is fawning, is like appeasing, people pleasing. It's all the same, because boundaries are on the other side of that. And what holds people back. So I'm going to give some hot tips as to where, that a boundary needs to be in place. What is going to come up energetically for you? You're going to have some resentment. You're going to have some health symptoms or mental health systems. You're going to be burnt out. That's when we know we need to have boundaries. And people don't know that they need to even have self boundaries, stuff that they are willing to take and not take.
You probably know this book already, because you said you're going to have resentment. You're probably have retaliation. You said you'll probably have physical symptoms. Mm-hmm. That book?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I'm showing everybody's metaphysical anatomy. Your body is talking. Are you listening? By Yvette Rose.
Mm-hmm. And that's our body doesn't have, that's what somatic experience is about. And I combine IFS parts work, and it's just faster and more complete and mystical and amazing. And I'm obsessed with it. I love it so much. But your body speaks through symptoms, even through mental health, because there's no other way for our parts, our trauma to get our attention other than like, okay, well, I'm going to start, you're going to, now you have these symptoms and now this, that. Our body can even block medications or supplements too with trauma histories, especially for people with medical trauma. So a lot of people can be trying to take healthy foods and things like that, and it can be blocking it because of one part in your system cannot be on board with like the medication.
Process issue versus an input issue.
Because you've got a battle inside, and so your body can do that. Your bodies can give you like actual health conditions, mental or physical, because they're trying to get your attention. That's why, to the trauma responses really have wisdom within if we learn how to listen. And that's what I teach people to do, is learn how to listen. And what the traditional mental health model does is kind of like it's looking at the symptoms, but I want to journey into that. I'm like, oh, interesting. And like go towards it. So I go towards everything and from myself, like from my authentic nature. And I get really curious about what is happening. And these things are diagnosed as this, that, and the other. And what is it? It's trauma. It's consciousness process.
One of my clients was having problems in the gym for her arm. And so I said, well, okay, right or left? She's like, oh, left. I'm like, receiver's off. Right. It's a block. So it can be. Well, it was for her. But I mean, but for her, it definitely could be something else, right? But in this case, So we have to wrap up, and I want to know what you want to leave people with. If and we should probably pick another date and have you back on because there's so much to talk about, and we can
So just get curious with everything. So when we're in the energy and we're in the nervous system part of ourselves of curiosity, we can't really fully be in a trauma response, and we're more in our authentic nature. So curiosity and compassion towards your situation, all of your symptoms. Get curious about the inner critic, and if you journey into that with support, it can be the voice of your father, the voice of a culture, the voice of a toxic, abusive bully growing up. It's not you. You were the one who's aware of that.
And how do people get in touch with you? Because this will be on audio as well. They might not. So once you
my website is theintegrativecounselor.com. That's the name of my business. I'm on social media. If you search for the Integrative Counselor, that's me on most places. And then my email is Shannon at theintegrativecounselor.com. I respond best to email. And if you call, I will probably email you because then I can keep track of the conversation because I get so many messages.
Well, and if you're a shaman, which you are, and here's the thing, we are accessing consciousness, right? And so that puts us into different planes. And sometimes there's a memory issue with that because you're in two different planes at the same time accessing. And so one of my clients laughs at me all the time. She's like, yeah, you don't remember anything. I said, no, because if I did, that means I was speaking to you out of ego. Right.
Yeah, I'm filtering a lot of information, and have my sense perception is pretty fine tuned on some things, and so I like to have one system email that I can keep track of, and that's just the best way to get a hold of.
That is awesome, and so we're going to end the show now, but we'll hold on for a second after the end so we can get you scheduled for another time because you are such a wealth of information and the world needs to know more about you. For anybody who wants to talk to me, it's Reverend Jodi Suson Calhoun. I like to sing that. And 847-738-0242. Text messages are usually best for me or Jodi@SusonEssentials.com. You can email me or check out the website at SusonEssentials.com. Click the red free consult button. So super excited to have you. And we are gonna sign off, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Jodi.
Oh, thanks for being here. You're just a blessing. So thank you.